All right, thanks, Russell. We get situated here. I've been thinking about today, and then obviously being here. I could not be more grateful for you guys. And I mean this with all sincerity. I have missed this. I know you have missed this, but the Lord in this season has just clearly helped us with gratitude. We have friends who are in India and in South Africa, and to hear the kind of things that they are experiencing and going through, when I look at the things that I'm facing due to the COVID season, it's nothing that pales in comparison. But the fact that we can gather like this as men and worship together, it is not lost on me. I know it's not lost on you, but I'm just so grateful for each and every one of you. We had to take a quick pivot through Armory. We had a lot of plans at the beginning of the year. We had to call some audibles, and one of the main things was we really wanted to look at the theme. We had a great theme lined up. I think it'll be great for next year. And we need to do things a little differently, obviously, but we also want to make sure that the messages that we are talking about are not just relevant for men, but they are relevant for men right now. And so that's where the theme leading through tough times came into. And so tonight, to kind of keep with that theme, I want to share about making the tough calls. I don't know about you, but I've faced some adversity, as Greg's talked about, this year in 2020. There have been some significant challenges. What's been interesting to me is that we have this mantra in our staff here at Northlands where we say this, and it's something that Greg coined. It's, you think life's difficult, and it's not. And what we mean by that is anytime we have a breakthrough moment, anytime we solve a problem, anytime somebody does something just astounding for our team that really helps us as a team, one of us chirps up and goes, man, you think life's difficult, but it's not. And one of the reasons we share that is because we want to celebrate the person who brought breakthrough, we solved the problem, but it's also because of the irony around it, because life is difficult. Life is already difficult without COVID. And so one of the things that I want us to look at tonight is this reality. And I have to start off with some bad news, but I promise you we're going to get out of the bad news, go to some good news, and then I'll get to the focus of my message. Here's the bad news. Life is difficult, and when COVID comes, the problems that life already presents itself seems like they have steroids put into them. So I've felt problems in my life before 2020, but it feels like the problems that I am facing now are stronger, bigger, and they're coming at me far more frequently than usual. So let's just talk about some of the strains we have. Obviously, there's this health strain that we're dealing with. Perhaps some of us are feeling a financial strain right now. Perhaps it's around our career. Perhaps it's around our family or our marriage. Perhaps it's around just fear in general or anxiousness we're having to deal with. Now, that happens in our everyday life, but it seems like during a COVID season, these kind of problems can happen not just once or twice or just from one of these categories, but on a daily basis on repeat. So here's what we've been dealing with. We've been dealing with problems that are bigger and stronger, happening far more frequently. And on top of that, there's been an emotional, mental, physical, and even spiritual drain that we have experienced. We have felt the fatigue operating at this level for 23 weeks. That's significant. I was reading an article. This was to give week 7 of COVID. People said that they're reporting what they're calling Zoom fatigue. So at first, weeks 1 and 2, Zoom was exciting and fun, and now anybody who's getting ready to start a school semester, or anybody who's doing staff meetings through Zoom, you're going, Zoom is not fun anymore. It was cute at first. Hey, look at this, we're working from home in our pajamas, and now I'm tired and I want to put on real pants. So they're saying, this is what Zoom fatigue was. It was coming out in 3 ways. People were reporting, says, man, I feel like I've been working 12-hour days, even though I'm just doing the exact same amount of hours of work Monday to Friday. And so Zoom was creating this through technological error. They were saying there's glitches in the Wi-Fi, so people kept getting bumped off. So they had to keep going back to the meeting again and again. You have a 30-minute meeting, staff meeting, but it keeps going to 45 minutes to an hour long. Why? Because people are getting bumped off. There's glitches. Someone doesn't know how to share the screen, for heaven's sake. It's been 23 weeks. Know how to share the screen. Presenting something, hey, you're on mute. So all of these little glitches adds 5 minutes here and there. And so then your boss says, or whoever's leading the meeting goes, hey, so sorry that I kept you a little bit longer than usual. And it's because we're dealing with the technology errors in it. There was also the work-life balance issues that we're dealing with. So if you heard Evangeline screaming in the background at any point in time during a Zoom meeting, I apologize, but you have to deal with it like I do. This creates distraction, though. We have kids running around in the background. We're trying to present during a staff call. Nicole and I have this joke. She's doing Zoom calls downstairs. I'm going upstairs, and we're just constantly going back and forth, rotating between throwing Evie down the stairs and up the stairs based off of whose calls next. This creates, we're tired. The third one I thought was fascinating to me, and it's this. It's nonverbal communication being pacified or muted. Nonverbal communication that's being muted. I had breakfast with my man Dave Hale, one of my good friends this morning. We're sitting across from the table, and as he's telling stories, as we're joking and laughing around, I know when he's getting ready to tell a joke because I can see it in his eyes. Before he says it, Tom, right as he's about to say something, and you're like, yeah, that's very serious, you're leaning in, something switches on his eyes, and I go, he's about to joke around. And so that's a communication that I'm seeing. If somebody's crossing their arms, if there's a slight twinge on the corner of their mouth, all of these things, our brain is continually going and taking in that information, and it's that communication that's helping us decipher information. We don't have that because of Zoom. We haven't had personal interaction. And so what's happening is when we're on Zoom, we're watching essentially words and tone. That's all we have. So your brain is actually working overtime trying to decipher information that is coming at you, and it's going into overdrive. So we are feeling mental fatigue, physical fatigue, emotional fatigue, and this has been 23 weeks. This is a problem. Now, we're leaders. We are men. We are fathers. We are husbands. We are business owners. And so on top of all of that, there are people that are in your charge and under my charge, and they are looking to us. And you know what else we have in common? They've also gone through 23 weeks. They are facing problems that are bigger and coming at them more frequently. They are also feeling the fatigue, and they are looking to leaders to help them in this time. And this is the honor, gentlemen, that we get to have. We get to lead through tough times. That's the bad news of all the problem and the fatigue. Here's the good news, and it's what we say at Armory, and it's why we created Armory, and it's our mantra. It's this verse right here, 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 7. By truthful speech and the power of God, with weapons of righteousness for the right hand and for the left hand. You have been equipped with everything that you need, every weapon, every tool, every problem that you are going to face, and every problem that is presenting itself to you within the people who are under your charge. You have been equipped by God to occupy that space. I could not have said it better, and Greg handled it there. If God wanted another husband for your wife, he would have given her one, but he chose you because you're the right man for that job. The same for your kids, and the same for the organization or the team that you are leading. If you are in a seat of leadership, it's because God ordained it, and he has appointed you because you have what it takes to occupy it, and that is the good news. So here's my one thought. If you're taking notes, this is the one thought that I would want you to write down, and I'm gonna break this message into two sections. I wanna talk about us individually, leading ourselves. I want to address the problems that we are facing and the energy deficiency that we're trying to fill ourselves back up with. So we want to get our energy back, and we got to knock down some problems for ourselves. And then I also want to talk about what do we need to be? What has God called us to be for the people that are in our charge? Because we are leaders. We have a responsibility to them. So here's my big thought. In tough times, when certainty is impossible, consistency is essential. In tough times, when certainty is impossible, consistency is essential. When it comes to ourselves, I don't have certainty right now in my circumstances, but I can be consistent in my character. I cannot control what is happening to me, but I can absolutely control who I choose to be in times of peace or in the storms. You should be the same man. Do we operate differently? Do we do things a little differently? Do we call audibles and do gatherings like this? Absolutely. But we are preaching the exact same message and gathering together as we should. So in times of uncertainty, when we can't rely on our circumstances to behave the way we want them to, we can still be consistent in our values. And honestly, we can be consistent for the people that are with us. Did I just go dark? Either that was a message from the Lord, he's like, stop, Tyler, you're done. Or there it is. Woo, keep it going, man. The lights are back on. So here's where I want to start. Let's talk about dealing with our own things that we have to deal with. We have tough calls to make. People are relying on us to make decisions. We're having the hard conversations. And this is what I would want to say. When it comes to being in a crisis, as I've talked about, the rules are always changing as they've been changing. Our circumstances are higher pressure than they've ever been. And here's the answer that everybody is looking to you as a leader, and it's the question that I know to do. And so I want to do how do we there's so many problems here. There's no way I can possibly hear every single problem and then go, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. But how we approach the problem is what I want to talk about. Our approach should be consistent. People need consistent leaders right now, not people who are promising certainty. I'm getting ahead of myself, so I'll stay on track. In order to deal with this, when we're asking the question, what should I do? And that question is unclear for us. Values are what make the decision for you. Your values make the decision for you. And I want to break that down a little bit for us. I preached a little bit on Sunday. If you were able to tune in online, you've heard some of this message, but I'm just going to touch on a couple things from Sunday and then move on to some new stuff. Here's what I want to define for values, and here's why values are important. This is my definition of values. Your values. Values are the fundamental belief that guide and motivate your attitude and your actions. They are the thing that helps us determine who we are and what is most important to us. Values, they are fundamental beliefs that guide us. As I said, in times of crisis, we're asking the question, what to do? Our values guide us to the answer. They motivate us to take action and to hold the right attitude, whether it's, again, in time of a crisis or in times of peace. They help us clarify who we are and what is really most important. How many people have prioritized in 2020? How many people, as you looked at the bills that you're like, these have to be paid, and you know what? That's fluff. We don't need to deal with that right now. We're just going to cancel those subscriptions. When you start analyzing, okay, these are the things that are most important to me, you start putting things behind them, the things that you value, the things that are important to you, they make up who we are. And so here's what I want to do. I want to help us briefly, and we'll cover this a little bit towards the end. I want to help us acknowledge the values we have. I once said, this is helping us create our values. The reality is you already have your values. You can state your values, but the things that you do, if I watch your actions, I can tell you your values. So all I want to do is I want us to become aware of the values that we have, and if there are any values that are not kingdom values, we need to destroy the values that we are called to. The two things that I want to focus on for values is who and do. Who and do. When we're trying to figure out what it is that we need to do, we have to start with who we are. And here's why I say that. So I'm going to use myself as an example. My name is Tyler. I'm a man. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm a pastor, I'm a leader, I'm a brother, I'm a friend, I'm a son. These are all the roles that I am called to play. As Christian men, we have an advantage because we're not going through the world going, I'm wondering who I'm supposed to be. We were created by a God who has clarity about who we were called to be, and he has called you to the roles that you are currently occupying in, and for any roles that you're going to step into the future. You are a husband because that was God's ordainment for you. And so when we start with who am I called to be, it automatically starts shaping what am I supposed to do. When we look at the scriptures, is there anything that God says about what a leader should be, what a father should be, what a husband should be? I love Micah 6:8. Oh man, what does God require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, to walk humbly before God. Values, humility, kindness and mercy, justice. These are the values that God expects from us as men. As a husband, sacrificial love. Now watch this for a minute. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a friend, I'm a brother, I'm a pastor. All of these roles require me to operate with love. Not a single one of those roles, if I look at the scriptures, all of them require love from me. So love is one of the values that I'm going to embrace. Love will be the primary mode of my operation. And I will argue it's supposed to be the primary mode for you if you're in any of these spaces. So what we do is we go, who am I called to be? Now, what does the Bible say about that person? Now here's where I want to watch the values guide us. We're guided by our values. I love what Craig Groeschel says. If you haven't listened to his podcast, you need to listen to it. Craig Groeschel Leadership Podcast, episodes 5 and 6 speaks to value. And he said this, and it's just stuck with me for the last 8 weeks or so. Values determine your behavior. It's that simple. Values determine who you are and what's most important to you. Any action that you take, it's because there's a value connected to it. If you see an action that you don't like and it frustrates you and you're angry and you see something because they violated a value. Matt, if you could just move your arms like this. Yeah, you sit right there and you just keep those lights on. Here we go. Values guide us because they determine who we are called to be. So this is what I want to just point out to us. Values don't make hard decisions comfortable, but they do make the hard decisions clear. Here's the example that I wanted to give and that I thought of. In 2012, I stepped onto eldership here at Northlands. I had so many prophetic words up until that point. Tyler, you're called to be a shepherd and you're called to preach the gospel. You're called to communicate the gospel. And so there was no doubt in my mind, Lord, you've called me to communicate the gospel. Problem was, I was so terrified of public speaking, absolutely hated it. I would shake, adrenaline rush, all of it. I'm still dealing with some of those side effects, but by the grace of God, he's bringing me more and more into this role and identity. In 2012, I made a commitment because the Lord challenged me. He said, hey, Tyler, I just have to ask you a question. Why do you keep turning down invitations for communicating that I'm setting up for you? Greg's message could not have been clearer. Show up. He goes, there's more invitations for you to preach, to lead groups, to share, and you're going, it's just not convenient for me right now. I don't want to do it. And what I was doing was it was just going to be hard. I wasn't wanting to feel the adrenaline. I wasn't wanting to puke in the bathroom. That's right, it happened. It's one of those things. I would stay up all night. I'd wake up early. It would be something that would hang on my mind. And so I didn't want to go through the uncomfortable decision of saying yes. And so this is what the Lord told me. You're not allowed to say no anymore because you're called to be a great student of communication. I want you to absorb as much content as you can. And every time you have an invitation, that's an invitation for me to practice and hone the gift. And so I told my wife, I said, hey, babe, just for the calendar until the Lord tells me I can change the mode. If anybody asks me to communicate communion, offering, message, I have to say yes. I can't say no. So she was behind me on that. And for about a year and a half, if Greg gave me an invitation, if anybody gave me an invitation, before I even knew what the invitation was or how long I had to prepare, the answer was always yes. Why? Because I embraced the value that I'm going to be a great student of communication. So we're faced with significant problem. Option B, you're going to go down this road. And all we have to do is we have to ask ourselves, what does our value require of us? If one of your values is generosity, a great question to ask is you're looking at the option. There's option A, there's option B. What would a generous person do? What would a merciful person do? What does generosity require of me? And so again, the options were there. Say yes or no to the invitation. But I didn't have the option of no anymore. There was only one option. The answer was very clear to me. Values, they do not make the decisions that we have to deal with during this time any more comfortable, but they do make them clear. And we are men. We're not afraid of embracing pain. We're not afraid of waking up early. We're not afraid of blood, sweat, and tears. What we need as leaders is we're just looking for clarity. Lord, what am I supposed to do? If you give me clarity, Lord, of what I am supposed to do, I will do it. And values help us focus in on what is most important in making the right decisions. I want to shift gears and I want to talk about the people that are in our charge. So I want to talk through this and what we're called to be for our people. Again, let's start with the who. In order to talk about the people who are in your charge, what are the roles that you are currently occupying? Are you a husband? Are you a father? Are you leading a department, a business? Did you found a company? Who are the people that look to you when they need something and they say, hey, I'm not sure what to do. What do you think? Let's talk about those people and let's list them out specifically. List out our specific roles and list out the people. Make it personal. Who are the people that look to you, especially in these times? In tough times, when certainty is impossible, consistency is essential. We as leaders should not, and honestly, nobody should expect it from us, to make certain statements in terms of promises. So for example, and if you're a parent, you know that you might have said this and it's okay, God's giving grace. Don't worry, honey. I'm sure you're gonna have the senior year that you always anticipated and expected, and they're not gonna cancel prom. That would be crazy. So pastor, no, there's no way we wouldn't open the doors during Easter. Honey, no, don't worry. I'm sure our finances are not gonna be strained during, it's been a lot of weeks. Don't worry, team. Our company, we've seen storms before. I'm certain that we are gonna get through this without any sort of loss at all. Now, I'm not saying that we can't stand on some certainties, and I want to talk about what we can be secure in. But what I am saying is that when people are looking to you to help them with their problems, they are there to not so that you fix all their problems. We are in a storm, and nobody's looking at you to stop the rain. Pun intended. But what they are looking for you to do, as Greg said, to show up and to be consistent. And so for me, when I'm looking through this right now, I've been thinking through this. Nicole, obviously my wife, she is in my charge. I am called to lead my family. My wife looks to me far more for the consistency of my character than she is expecting me to solve all of the world's problems. She is not looking to Tyler to cure COVID. She is not looking to Tyler to fix the $1 trillion of deficit that we are in as a country. She is looking to me to be faithful. She is looking to me to be generous. She is looking for me to continually speak peace in my home. And so this is the role that we are called to. We are called to show up, and we are called to lead people through. One day, Jesus will eradicate totally and completely. He has victory over, but one day, the valley of the shadow of death will be completely forgotten and no more. We will not be experiencing death anymore. But until that day comes, we are being led by him through the valley. And as leaders, you are called to lead people through the valley. We are leading people through tough times. We're not gonna be able to solve all the world's problems, and this is why values are so important. I can't deal with 100 different problems in my own life or 100 more problems from everybody else's life, but what I can do is I can focus on the one man. I'm gonna be very clear about who I am called to be during this time. I'm not gonna focus on thousands of problems. I'm gonna focus on a few values that I know my people need me to be. We have limited energy, gentlemen. We're tired. I would focus far more on determining who you are called to be for your people more than you're trying to figure out solving all the problems that your people are going through. I'm not saying that we can't solve some of those problems, that God's gonna give us grace and wisdom. I'm just simply saying going to be forever. But our people are looking for someone to say, hey, I need you to walk with me through this. And that is the responsibility that we have. And so I share that because we gotta take a weight off of our shoulders. We're leaders, and I get this. We're constantly going, it bothers me to watch somebody struggle through a problem. I wanna just take the problem away. I wanna take the load off of them completely. That is the role of Jesus and the Holy Spirit, not yours. Your shoulders will collapse under that weight. Here's the verse that I've been meditating on for the last several weeks, and I've been reminding myself when I felt exhausted, when I felt overwhelmed, when I'm dealing with these problems, when I'm not sure what to do, I just keep reminding myself of this scripture. Galatians chapter 6, verse 2-5, it says this, here's what we're called to do. Bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. For if anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. But let each one test his own work, and then his reason to boast will be in himself alone and not in his neighbors. Verse 5 is so important for us as leaders. For each will have to bear his own load. For each will have to bear his own load. You trying to step in and to take the entire load and to eradicate the storm of COVID for every single person that is in your charge, you are robbing people from finding the grace of God. The load that you and I are shouldering for our own personal life, it is too great for you and I to bear. But we are not alone. This is the grace of God. When the weight of life was crushing to me, I found Jesus. And he lifted me up and he strengthened me and he walks with me. We are not alone. So what is the responsibility of leaders, especially for husbands, especially for fathers? I'm going to walk my wife to the feet of the one who solves all problems, who's the one who will make this broken world completely and totally whole. I am leading my wife and my daughter through the tough times, not eradicating the tough times, but leading them through the tough times and laying our problems at the feet of Jesus, who will make all things whole. This is what I am confident in. You want certain promises from me? Here's what the Lord is faithful. He is kind. He is good. He is powerful. He is not thrown off by So here's what I want us to look at as quickly as possible. What does bearing the burdens look like? We are called to bear with one another. Everybody has their own load, and we bring those loads to Jesus. But as leaders, we are walking with people to help them through their burdens. What does that look like? In times of crisis, there are two things that we all want, and there's two things that your people want. They want security, and they want clarity. They want to know in security, I need to know that in the end, everything is going to be okay. That in the end, everything is going to be okay. And they want clarity. They are asking the same questions that you and I are asking. What in the world is going on? What am I supposed to do? So how do we provide security and clarity for our people? Let's talk about security for a moment. Here's 3 things that we can do that produces security in our wives, in our kids, in our teams. And I want us to think about this, and I'm gonna draw it back to our values and being consistent in our values. We need to let them feel our empathy and our compassion. I think one of the profound gifts that we have of COVID, the opportunities that Greg is talking about, is that we have all experienced the exact same thing in various degrees, absolutely, but the entire world is talking about the pandemic and what it's done to us. So it's easy for us to go, hey team, I know how you're feeling. You're tired, we're weary. To just acknowledge the fact that people are going through pain. People need empathy and compassion. Why? Because it produces comfort. I've been thinking about, even earlier in the year, and they're still happening around the country, just the protests that we've seen of racial injustice. And just sitting across from my friends, brothers of mine who are black, who have experienced, and hearing their stories, and just sitting with them and showing them compassion. Jesus was moved to action because of compassion. Compassion, empathy, these should be values of ours. Our people need to be comforted. They need security, and we bring them comfort by telling them, hey, let them hear your vulnerability. They need to feel empathy and compassion because it brings them comfort. They need to hear vulnerability from you because that helps them trust you. People need leaders they can trust right now. They don't need leaders who are promising certain things that they cannot possibly provide, but they do need leaders that they can trust. When they hear your voice, let it be trusting. This is something that I am learning. When I say I don't know, it doesn't disqualify me as a leader. I'm learning that that's actually one of the marks of a great leader, to say, you know what, I don't know, but I'm gonna go and find the answer, and I'm not gonna rest until I do. To be able to look at your wife and say, honey, I'm not sure yet what to do. It doesn't mean, this is what it does. It's the mark of a great leader. Being honest with your own pain and the pain of those, and to know others feel the pain, it builds in them credibility. They're saying, this guy gets it. He's with me in this. Vulnerability builds trust. We want to give our people, we want to give them security by giving them comfort and by giving them trust. Number 3. Now, one note that I want to say before I go to number 3. People can handle bad news better than no news. People can handle bad news better than no news. Fear and uncertainty grows in the no news. You have to show up. And to show up and to be able to say, I'm feeling your pain. Can I just express to you, here's some of the things that I am feeling during this time? It builds trust. And that communication doesn't make you weak. It's simply saying, I'm here for you and I'm ready. And even if you have to give bad news, that bad news is far better than no news, because in the absence of clear communication and clarity, which is the absence of leaders, uncertainty grows and it festers. Number 3, let them see your/God's perspective. Greg talked about this again. Look up and speak up. What is God saying? What is he doing? Take that perspective, and that is what you need to give to your people. Perspective is so important because it gives people context. And context, there's always a monster in the closet until what happens? Dad or mom walks in and they flip the light on. Then they see it's not a monster, it's just a coat in the closet. Light brings perspective. We bring perspective. What is the Lord saying? This is what we are going to say. What is he doing? This is what we are going to lead our people to. Perspective matters. I remember 2001, 2008, 2001, we all know World Trade Centers came crashing down. I was young, but very aware of what was going on. I wasn't a part of the conversations though. The conversations in 2008, I was very much a part of. The market crashed. There were people that, and by God's grace, I've forgiven them, but there were people that I looked to as leaders. I was in their charge. And the perspective that I got from my leaders was, this is the end of the world as we know it. We are never going to recover from this. Don't ever think that you're going to have any sort of financial backing or retirement plan. It's done. I still see the faces. When Greg talked about how do you want your daughter, how do you want your son to remember you for what you said during this time, I can still see the faces of men who gave me bad perspective and the anxiousness that they created because of that bad perspective. Perspective gives context and it settles people. People, when they are comforted, when they know that they can trust you, and when they know that you are settling them, your presence is settling to them, they feel security regardless of the day that they are having. Make sure that we have the right perspective. Let's go to clarity, and I'll wrap it. Clarity, I love this proverb, Proverbs 29:18. Where there is no vision, people perish. 3 things that we want to do to give our people clarity. We want to provide them with purpose. This is as practical as I can make it. Giving your people, whoever it may be, just the next step. We love to plan out the annual kind of calendar here at Northlands. We had a whole annual magnet, like, hey, here's all the events that we're going to. We've changed gears. We're not talking about 12 months or even 6 months, not even necessarily 3 months. We're going, hey, what are the critical things that have to happen this month? And we commission from there. These are the actions we're going to take. When COVID happened, I saw Nicole, let's take COVID was going, but I go, we need the next step. Provide people with purpose. Give them the next step. They're asking the question, what are we going to do? They're not asking for all the to-dos. They're not expecting you to be Rain Man to have all the answers. What they are expecting from you is to give purpose. What I love, don't miss crisis. I have a friend who's a pastor in North Carolina, and they do hurricane season all the time. So hurricane relief's a big thing. He goes, there is nothing better for our church than a good hurricane. He goes, because when crisis hits, people get very focused on mission. And when people have purpose, they come alive. We have an opportunity because of COVID to make our people alive. Give them the next step. Not in the 6 months, but what can you tell them? Hey, here's what we're doing today. Here's what we're doing the next month. Number 2, for clarity. This is so big. We are going to provide hope. We are leaders, and we serve a God who is filled and overflowing with hope. We are going to be ambassadors for hope from heaven every single day of the week. Hope for me, I wanted to write this down. You can't predict the future, but you are not completely in the dark. What do you know will hold true? So one of the things, I've said this both to people on the team, members in the church. I've also said it to people who continually, I don't know how, the Lord anoints me. He brings people in my path who just want to rub me the wrong way on purpose and talk to me about how the church is going to die in 30 years. What am I certain of about the future? The church is not going anywhere. I am certain the church comes alive in persecution. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know how we're going to do. What am I certain of? I am certain the church is not going anywhere. Honey, here's what I am certain of. We have a community that we can count on. If anything were to happen to us, we got a community that has us. I am certain of this. Honey, worst case scenario, we can totally live with your parents. Yeah? Come on, yeah, hey. Let me get my bag, no. We give certainty where we know for sure. We produce hope. I am full of hope, even from what we've experienced, because I know that even when we face character, we are growing in the values. We are very clear of the men we are called to be. And can I just say, if 2020 produces just men who are consistent and faithful, I will do 2020 again on repeat for the next 5 years. If this gets us clear about who we are called to be, it was well worth it, because the world before COVID and after COVID, they need faithful and consistent men to show up. Number 3, this one for me, it's what I've actually learned through this process. Provide your voice. Speak up, as Greg talked about. Provide your voice. But here's what I've learned in the process. I'm so picky about the words I use. I'm like, did I say it right? Half the time, your people don't need to figure out what words you're saying. They need to hear your voice. What do leaders do? I was out for a run the other day, and I'm running, and I'm just trying to not die. I'm like feeling gassed. And then I see this lady off in the distance. She's running the other direction, and her pace was insane. And so what naturally happened to me, I lifted up my head, I pulled everything else that I could, and I started trying to match the pace that I was seeing her coming at. This is what leaders do. We lift the heads. When we come into the room, when the people hear our voice, when our presence is felt, fathers, when your presence is felt in the room, people lift their heads. They need to hear your voice. Over-communicate the first two. Over-communicate the first two. Provide purpose, provide hope, and continually hammer down on hope again and again and again. Continually provide purpose for your kids, for your family, for your team again and again and again. Because when leaders are operating, it is the gateway for all gifts. Thriving takes place. We are trying to learn to survive through 2020, but leaders will bring forth thriving for the people that are in our charge. We help pick up the pace. Use your voice. Absence of leaders breeds uncertainty. As Greg said so well, we have to show up. We are called to lead people through the storms of life. We are called to lead people through the valleys. They are needing us to provide security and clarity, and we have everything that we need. That list that I brought off of those 3 things for security and for clarity, these are things that we can absolutely do. I want to leave us with 4 questions that I want you to take with you tonight. And just let's start with the values that we talked about. Would you just list off, would you write the list tomorrow? Who am I called to be, Lord? Write the list down. Who have you called me to be? What are the roles that I am called to play in? Number 1, who has God called me to be? Number 2, what does the Bible say about those roles? Would you get in the Word tomorrow and just go, man, what does the Bible say? What does God require of a father, of a husband, of a friend, of all the roles? Would you just look, what is the scripture saying about these roles? And I'm promising you there, you'll see the values that you should be having. They will help you make the decisions. Number 3 is important for me, and it's one that I know is important for you because you're a leader. Personalize these roles and write who's in your charge. I'm going to write Nicole for my wife. She's in my charge. Evangeline, my daughter, she's in my charge. The people that I lead on the team here, this community, I think about your faces. Anytime that I'm called to make a decision, it's faces like yours that I'm thinking about, my brothers in arms. Write them down, make it personal, feel it. Number 4, make a plan. With that information that you have from the first 3 questions, I want you to write down an agenda item. I want you to say, I am going to express a value on this day, at this time, in this meeting, for this person. Your wife needs to feel your sacrificial love. She needs to feel that value. When are you going to show it to her this week? Your kids need to feel the presence of peace in your house, and you could be the gateway to provide it. I know you are. When are you going to demonstrate that for them? Your team is looking to you, not to have all of the answers, but they're looking to hear your voice, to sit with them, to hear their stories. When are you going to make time to just sit with them? Make a plan. I am so encouraged. You know why I'm encouraged? Because uncertain times gives us a job. Leaders were born for such a time as this, and you and I are called to be leaders. In times of peace, we have leaders, but it's crisis, when chaos is ensuing, that we run into the storm because we're crazy like that. Everybody knows this about leaders. We don't run into the fray because we have 100% certainty. We run into the fray because God is whispering to us, go boy, this is what I've made you for. And every single fray that you are called to fight in, it's not requiring you to have all the answers or to have 100% certainty. It is requiring you to be consistent. The Lord uses not the able, but the willing. The one who is going to show up, the one who is going to lead people through. Every single person he used, I would have picked somebody else, and he used them anyway, and he took their willingness, and he did a profound work in their life, and the Lord wants to do that for us in 2020. Would you pray with me? Lord, thank you so much for tonight. Thank you for the work that you're doing in our lives. Lord, I thank you that we have been given the gift of leadership. We are called to steward this gift well. You've given us the gift of the people in our lives, and we're called to steward them well. Lord, would you fill our energy back up? Would you help us have clarity about all the problems that we are facing? But Lord, would you hold us fast and secure? You are our anchor, God. You will never, ever fail. You are faithful, and you are walking with us. Lord, you give us the grace and the strength of leadership. And when we make a mistake and when we fall, you give us grace for that as well. The point that your grace abounds with us 100% no matter what. Lord, would you help us to feel that grace for the rest of 2020 and the years ahead? In Jesus' name, amen. I'm going to hand it back off to Russell.